In this video, I want to break down how to use and some of the features in the UE5 material for cinder blocks painted. So this way you can get up to speed very quickly on how to use it. And if you want to have this material to use to create new environments with all the features I'm going to break down for how to use it and what you can do with it, visit patreon.com/WoLD, support WoLD, and you'll have access to this asset as well as many others. So after you've downloaded the file, the zip file, and you've extracted everything, go ahead and navigate into your Epic Games launcher and find the project you want to use it in. If you don't, you'll have to create a new project. In my case, I'll open up an existing project and show you the folder structure that's required for the materials or any asset you download from WoLD Patreon. So I'm going to use this UE5 tutorial project I already have. Simply right click on that project and go to show in folder. And it's going to take you right inside your project directory into the subfolders. And you want to be specifically navigating into the content folder. Let me go ahead and open up the WoLD Patreon files that you downloaded. And it's this one right here. So I'm going to go inside this folder. And here's what it's going to look like inside. So your project name, this is what the project that you just opened up. In my case, it's UE5 tutorials. So navigate inside here. You'll see your content folder. So you want to navigate into the content folder of your project. And let's go inside this content folder. Here you have your WoLD Patreon. So if you don't have a WoLD Patreon folder inside your project directory, inside the content folder, go ahead and just simply copy and paste this entire folder into your project content directory. And once you do, it will work. If you already have the WoLD Patreon, then you can simply copy and paste it and merge everything together. Or you can simply navigate into the WoLD Patreon folder you already have within your project. And in this case, I just have a subfolder, but I don't have anything in it. And inside the downloaded asset files, I have varied miscellaneous subfolder. So in this case, just simply take the varied miscellaneous folder, Ctrl+C, and paste it into the WoLD Patreon subfolder that's inside your content directory of your project. And once you do, it will work when you open up your project. Now, there may be instances in the future where you may already have varied miscellaneous. This is where I keep single assets that don't pertain to a specific theme. So you may want to navigate into each subfolder and copy and paste all these files into their appropriate folder. Or you can just copy and paste your subfolder and then merge your content together. So the essential part here is you want to match the downloaded asset structure, name of the project, content directory, and then WoLD Patreon subfolder. And you want to do the same thing inside your project directory. So everything looks one-to-one for the folder structure that you downloaded from the asset files. This will ensure that they work and there's no errors or warnings where the textures or assets are not showing up because incorrectly placed files into a wrong subfolder. So simply just match what you see in the downloaded asset files to your own project directory inside the content inside WoLD Patreon. So once you've placed the folder into your content directory, you will have it available inside the content browser. Here's the WoLD Patreon. Open that up. Again, I want to emphasize that it's inside the content directory. So if you open up the WoLD Patreon, you will have the varied miscellaneous folder. Let's go inside this folder and you will have more subfolders. So in the case of this asset, you will have a map. So let me open this up. This is where I have a very simple structure created that you can test your material. And this is what I'm going to use to show you some of the features of the material. And again, it's just a simple basic map. And I have a static mesh that's 300 by 300 and UV'd. So if you go into the static meshes, it's a simple wall, 300 by 300 centimeters or Unreal units. Nothing to it. Very simple. But it's enough to use as an example. And then you have your textures. These textures are your albedo, your normal map, a packed roughness, ambient occlusion, and metallic. And this is 3 textures in one, packed into each individual channel. And it was authored and created from Substance Painter. It's a standard way of packing your ambient occlusion, your roughness, and your metallic into one single texture. There's no metallic property here, and there's no ambient occlusion, but we are using roughness from it. And then you also have 3 different masks, and I'll show you what they are and how they're being used. Inside the materials folder, you'll have your master material, mm_ for master material, and mi_ for material instance. So the master material, let me open this up really quick. There's a lot going on here. It's not too complex, but there's a lot of switches and a lot of setups. And to give you a quick overview, you have your albedo setups for the wall color. You'll be able to change the wall color, brighten or darken the texture, saturate it or desaturate it. Everything is being connected to a way to tile, offset, and rotate the textures of the cinder block. Then you have your standard roughness controls. This is where we're using that packed texture, the green channel, and you'll be able to change your roughness. and increase or decrease the minimum and maximum values to adjust that roughness. Then you also have your normal map input and controls, which is just ability to change the intensity of the normal map. And then there is a quick fix for if you're using rotation and a custom rotator that's been set up right here. There is an error that if you begin to use this rotator, the normal map doesn't actually rotate and positions itself correctly when the light hits it. And this fix solves the problem of the custom rotator not making that normal map also get that correct lighting information from the directional light or any light. And these two are just being added up together and connected to the normal map input. Now the main features of this material are all done with switches. So you will have ability to have a color strip on these cinder blocks and then change that color strip, change the tiling, the offset. You can rotate them. You can change the color of the strips. There's going to be 3 different strips that you can use and they all match the cinder block width or height of each one. Then you will also have a second color strip. This one adds an additional color strip for you to add in with the first one so you can have different color strips on the same wall. So instead of using the same color and just a single strip, you can have an additional second strip that's a completely different color, and I wanted to add that in to create even more variety within this material. And the setups are exactly the same as the first one. So you will use the first one, and if you want to add in a second one, you'll have a switch to turn that on. And again, everything's being controlled by switches. And then you will also have an additional parameter, an additional control for adding some variety of dirt, grime, and leaks on top of the cinder block. And this is also controlled by a switch, so you can turn that on or off. So now let's take a look at the actual material instance and all the controls within it. Let me go ahead and open up the material instance and just move it to the side, and let me maximize the window and go inside this building. So the first controls you will have are under Albedo cinder block. So you can change the color of the cinder block. So if you don't want this clean painted look, just simply enable wall color and change the wall color to anything you want. You will also have ability to brighten or darken the texture, as well as saturate it or desaturate it. So let me actually put a different color here. So let's do something like this, less intense. And if you increase this number, this will desaturate it. And if you decrease it, it will saturate it. Let me go ahead and reset this. And then you also have ability to change your albedo texture to something else. If you're going to be changing your textures, you should be doing it for all of them, such as albedo, normal map, as well as the roughness packed in texture. So essentially you could use this same material and plug in a different texture, but still use the color strips and the dirt variation on top. I'm not going to cover how to swap out textures, but I did create a parameter form so you could change the cinder block to something else. But you will just have to have those textures and then update it for albedo, for normal map, and for roughness so they all match. Next is the ability to change your roughness. So for roughness, you have 2 controls, minimum and maximum. So let me position my camera a little closer so the light hits it just right. So you can increase or decrease your max. You can see that it changes and modifies the roughness that's included, as well as the minimum. So if you need to do something with the roughness, you have ability to do so. Next, you have tiling controls. I don't see myself changing this very often, but you do have ability to offset. So if you need to offset it on X or on Y, you can do so, as well as increase or decrease the tiling. So if you need to do something with the tiling, make it less or more, you can do so. As well as if you need to rotate the cinder block, you can do so as well. Then you have ability to increase or decrease the normal map intensity. So let me zoom in a little closer right here. When you look at the cinder block, if you want to increase the normal map intensity, enable it and just increase this number to 2, 3. Of course, it's going to be strong with the higher you go. And if you decrease it to go below 1, this will decrease the intensity. Essentially, you can just remove the normal map completely by flattening it if you change it to 0. And then you have the fun part of this material, which are the color strips 1 and 2, and then dirt variation on top. So let's cover the color strips 1 first. When you enable this, you will have more controls to change the color strip 1. So I'm going to enable color strip 1, turn that on, and more options pop up. This is using a texture. Let me go ahead and show you what it is. It has 3 different masks of varying height that you can choose between using it. So if I open up the texture, let me open this up. There's a green, red, and the blue channels. The red channel has a single strip right here on the bottom. You can see it. The green has a little bit higher color strip, and then the blue has even more of a color strip. So this just covers more of the cinder blocks, and you'll be able to choose between all of them, whichever one you want to use, by enabling strip color channel selector and you can switch between the green, the red, or the blue, depending on the height of that color strip. And then you can change the color of that strip. So enable a color strip, and then choose the color you want to use. So now I can go back to green for 2 cinder blocks, to red for 1, or to blue for 5. Let me go back down to 1. And each color strip will have ability to change tiling or offset, as well as rotate. So here I have just one color strip, the red channel. So I can increase the tiling, which I'm not going to do for X, but you can do it for Y. And this will just increase the amount of single color strips being tiled. I can offset it. Offsetting it on X doesn't do anything because it's moving it side to side, but on Y it's moving it up and down. So you can just place that color strip anywhere else. And if you actually use maybe, let's say, the green channel, it'll give you 2 color strips. So you can do one on the bottom, one on top. And they all match the cinder block. So you'll just have to zoom in a little closer to make sure that it's kind of covered just that small portion right there, right in between. And I'll do the same thing for the top. So they all match as it was created specifically for this cinder block. And then of course you can rotate. So you can get some really interesting effects if you use rotate or maybe change a different channel and combine it with offset or tiling. So the amount of variety you can do just with a single color strip is a lot already. But then you can also, of course, add in a second color strip. Let me go ahead and reset all these values back down to normal. Let me go ahead and enable the first one. So in order to use the second one, you have to use the first one first. And then if you want an additional second color strip, then enable color strip 2. So for this one, let's go ahead and change the color to something else. Let's say just red. So let's say I have the first color strip, but I want to go ahead and have a second one with a different color. So I'm going to enable color strip 2, turn it on, and you have exactly the same controls. For this one, you can also change any channel you want. In this case, I have it by default set to the blue channel. And let's change the color. The default color, I gave it more of a gray, but you can change it to something else. Let's do blue, something like that. Let's click OK. And now you can go ahead and either change the strip color to a different strip position. Let's stick with the blue. And then you can use the offset on Y to kind of raise it up or down. Now, because you have a second color strip that's overlaying on top of the first, the colors will begin to blend together. So you can see the orange, that the red is kind of changing it to more of a different color, but that's how the blending works. With the second one, you will either have to offset it or just deal with the color blend that it's creating. So it's kind of like mixing 2 colors because one color is on top of another. But with offset, you can just move it and match it to the bottom one. So this allows you to really have a lot of variety by using these 2 color strips and then position them anywhere you want, changing the color to something else to create various interesting visual effects within the cinder block hallways. And the rest of the controls are the same for color strip 1. So by using these 2 together, you can have a variety of different effects and different positions, different colors. So again, the amount of variety here for you to make these unique is a lot. Let me go ahead and reset everything to default, and I want to show you that I included an additional packed mask texture that you can swap out these color strips for something else, for a different design. So I'm going to disable color strip 2. Let's go ahead and reset everything to defaults for color strip 1. Let's leave the color and the strip selector enabled. And let's say you don't want to use the single strip colors, and instead you want to use your own packed in texture masks. So you have not straight lines, but you have some kind of a different shape. And I provided one texture that has 3 different masks packed into the red, the green, and the blue. So you'll be able to select them here. So I'm going to enable texture mask for color strips. And here you can replace it to something else. So I'm going to press Control Spacebar to bring up the content browser. And here inside the textures folder, let me open this up a little bit. Inside varied miscellaneous textures, where you have all the textures for the asset, here's the mask, wall cinder block painted masks shapes 01. So you can just take this and drag it into the color strips 1 to replace the existing texture mask, which is straight lines, with the custom shape one. And now let me press Control Spacebar to get rid of the content browser. You can use any of these channels. So the red one has wavy lines, the green one has kind of abstract pattern, and the blue one has rounded shapes, rounded balls, circle shapes. And of course you can change the color. And then you have all the other controls to offset, to tile, and so on. And if you have your own mask that you want to use, you can do so. So if I go into the starter content, let me go into the regular content browser. If you navigate into starter content, if you happen to have it, into textures, there are a couple of masks that you can use here. So for example, this T ceramic tile, you can just drag it, replace it, and use some of the channels that are provided for you. So you can already see you can get a lot of different interesting shapes using these custom masks. And if you have your own, just bring it in and replace it here, and then use individual channels to select which one you want to use. Let me go ahead and reset everything, bring back our color strip, and disable things that I'm not using. And let's turn off the color strips actually. Let's turn everything off, get back to our regular default wall. And the last option I want to cover is the dirt variation on top. So the dirt variation on top works in a very similar manner as color strip 1 and 2. It's just using a different mask to create dirt, grime, leaks, and break up this clean painted look. So if I enable it and then turn it on, it adds in a texture mask. And let me go ahead and just take a look at this. Let me go back to the content browser so I can just show you what it is. So if I open this up, we have 3 channels. The red one is the leaks from the top, green one, dirt from the bottom, and blue one is just general mask dirt. And just to open the previous one, here are the shapes packed into 3 individual channels. The red one is the wavy lines, green one is the abstract shapes, and blue one is the circle shapes. So for the dirt, by default, I emphasized it so you can see it, and then you can begin to tweak various properties here. So you can change the color to match the wall behind it. So if you don't want it as intense, and of course you probably don't, you can tone that down using a different color. Maybe give it a bit more kind of like a red brown to signify the leak. I'm going to emphasize it so you can see it. Then you can also, let me click OK, choose to invert the mask, and all of them have a way to invert everything. So if you want to kind of invert the entire thing, you could. Then you have ability to adjust dirt mask contrast, kind of make it a little sharper. You have mask opacity. You can kind of remove it. You can also kind of do the opacity, how much of it being applied by using the color. That's kind of the best way to do opacity and kind of make it more subtle. Then you also have, of course, offset and tiling. So you can offset this if you need it on any direction. Probably don't want to do it on Y because you can see it just offsets it and then creates it on the bottom. But you have all the controls here, and as well as tile. You can tile in any direction. Let me go ahead and reset these. And then you have roughness controls for the dirt mask variation. You have your control for roughness as well as roughness contrast. So if I take a look at the light to get a little closer, and let's emphasize it a little bit more so we can see what's happening. So this is going to apply to roughness alone. So these 2 values are controlling roughness parameter. One controls contrast, the other one is variation. So if I increase it, you can see, can kind of play around with the roughness and how much of it is being applied. Do you want it more rough or do you want it more shiny? And then you can adjust the roughness contrast of how much of that mask is shown or not shown. And the way to look at roughness better is, again, you have to position the camera so you can see it more when the light hits it. And right here you can see it a little bit more shiny or more dull. So you just have to play with the values, find that camera position just right, and just begin to adjust how much of roughness and contrast you want. So here, if I want a little bit more dull, you can just kind of push the contrast more and increase the roughness variation. So it looks a little bit more like dirt. Or if you want it shiny, now you just have to find those right values to use. Let me go ahead and reset it. And last one I want to show is ability to select different channels. So we just took a look at a single channel, which is just top leaks. But if you want something else, let me enable dirt variation channels. The green channel is the dirt on the bottom. And again, it all comes down to just making it more subtle. You know, I'm trying to emphasize it so you can see it better, but you know, stuff like this, you want to break things up, and you probably don't want it to be very strong. So you just have to find the right values and create that variation within the clean painted look. And then the last one is just general dirt across the entire surface. So that's the blue channel. And again, for this one, I definitely want to tone that down. And actually, let me go with a little bit more white and zoom in and just, again, introduce it just a little bit. Kind of creates a little more bit of dirt everywhere. And of course, if you don't want to use any of these, you can include your own to use. So you could create your own, and just these are masks. So you would just create your own masks of dirt, of grime, of grunge to break up the clean painted look with your own custom masks. So this material has a lot of variety, a lot of different variations you can create. So play around with this, get used to it, get familiar with all the functions and how they work, and I hope you enjoyed this asset and create some environments with it. And I want to thank you for your support.